This is the Storytrust.Media podcast.
Okay, let's talk podcast sponsors. There's a lot of people just starting a podcast who I talk to on a frequent basis who are thinking, how soon can I get sponsors? They ask me, what about monetization? When do you think I can start making money off of this? This is quite possibly the most common question that I face. And often, they don't like to hear the answer. Welcome back to the Story Trust Media Podcast, episode 3. This has really been a blast, and I've gotten a lot of good feedback so far on this. So thank you for being part of this journey. And again, if you haven't subscribed yet up on any of the podcast players or up on YouTube, would really appreciate that. So you're always in the know when some more good podcast-related content comes out from Story Trust Media. And the next coming few weeks, I'm really, really excited about. I'm John Gehring, founder of Story Trust Media, and I talk with a lot of people naturally who are thinking about starting podcasts, asking about what it's like to start a podcast, wondering, can I be a podcaster myself? And with podcasts, they usually associate the larger names in the podcasting world and the monetary benefits that come with podcasting, because that's what we all want to do, right? Is make more money. But oftentimes they're very disappointed when I spill the truth about monetization. In fact, less than 1% of podcasts are monetized or have recurring sponsorships. And yes, you can monetize at any point by getting set up with certain monetization services like RSS.com or Buzzsprout and Spreaker enable their monetization feature. And basically, you will get less than a penny, fractions of pennies for certain ad hits that you get. So if you have, say, 100 listeners and they all get to hear a McDonald's ad and you get 1% of a penny for each of them, that episode officially earns you a hard-earned penny, which is great. Congratulations. And that is, one way that monetization can technically work. And it's how some podcast producers and podcast hosts and different people in the podcasting world can brag about monetization, monetizing their podcast, and how, you could do the same thing. You can monetize your podcast. But I want to really introduce a very clear mindset shift here, because unfortunately the reality is that for the vast majority of podcasters, 99.9% of them, because there are people in the top 1% and the top even 0.5% of podcasts who aren't making money off of it and can't make a substantial amount of money off of their show. They don't have a large enough audience. The vast majority of us aren't. And most of my clients aren't. And my personal show, this one and the Limitless Leadership Lounge, aren't. But that's not the point. So a different way of looking at monetization is not, for one thing, that your podcast brings in income, but your podcast can bring in value without bringing in income. We've talked about this when it comes to the relationships that you build, the content that you can create, it being a content creation engine, and it establishing trust as a brand. That's the number one benefit of podcasting. And for most of us, that's the real benefit. That's where it starts and ends. We're not chasing some sort of monetization like we're just a YouTube channel, right? But I want you to think about monetization a different way if that is something that you're looking to pursue. The number one question that I get when I talked about monetization earlier is how many views, hits, downloads, listeners, whatever way people like to term it, how many of those do I need to get monetized? How many of those do I need to replace my full-time income with my podcast? And here's the reality. You need a lot. In fact, just to attract a recurring sponsor, you will need at least 30 to 50,000 monthly downloads. What a download means is really any of the podcast players accessing your show and bringing it to somebody. So if somebody clicks on your episode on Apple Podcasts, that's a download, right? That's what you need. And sometimes other statistics sponsors will ask for. Any advertiser wants to know that their ad is being heard, right? So the time spent listening to your show. How engaged is your audience? Unique visitors versus recurring visitors. Those types of stats. Sponsors want to know that. So 30 to 50,000 downloads in. Now you can start attracting sponsors because they go, "Ooh, that's a pretty big audience." And what is any sort of sponsorship exchange? Really, it's just you loaning some time on your large platform in front of a lot of people to your sponsor so that they can send their message so that they can get hits out of it and hopefully new business for them too. So think of it as handing the sponsor the megaphone. The larger your audience, obviously, the more value that provides the sponsor. So we all know that. So we think about how many views and hits that I need to get. But here's the mindset shift. It's not always about the quantity of audience. It's about the quality and the niche of the audience. Niche being the key word here. Let me put it to you this way. If you have a podcast that's very specific, maybe you're talking to, for example, only nonfiction authors in California, subset group of people, right? Very, very niched. Now, your podcast may not have 30,000 to 50,000 downloads a month. In fact, there might not even be that many nonfiction authors in California. I don't know. California is a big place, so maybe. But they're not all going to find your show, right? But if you're talking to that niche of an audience and you maybe have 1,000, 2,000 downloads a month, sounds modest. Sounds like, hell, I'm not even anywhere near the biggest shows in the world. I'm top 10%, maybe even top 5%, but I'm not top 1%. I'm not the millions and millions of views. I'm not Joe Rogan, right? True. But your podcast can still attract a sponsor and is more likely to attract a sponsor in that space. And this is where, when you're hyper niched, everybody wins. When you hand somebody the megaphone who is in the same space as your entire audience. So, for example, nonfiction authors in California. How about a California publishing house, a California book editor, a California some sort of legal service for authors? You hand them the megaphone. Now they're talking to your audience, knowing that your audience is actually engaged with what they have to say. So they win because a higher percentage of that 1,000, say, person audience is now already a warmer lead for them. And they're not going to tune out when they just hear the ad, just like it's any other ad, because they're talking to them. This is why podcasting is so powerful. You're bringing on a sponsor who's actually talking to the same audience that you are. It can actually be a continuation of the show in some ways. So now who wins? The sponsor, because yes, they're paying for a slot on your show, but it's a more effective slot on your show. You win because your show doesn't sound so ad infested, right? It's not like you ever watch a YouTube video and it's rolling along, and it happens to all of us, right? And like a couple minutes in, and McDonald's just pops up and you're like, okay, and then you're just waiting to skip the ad. Okay, let's get back to the content. You can do that. You can monetize that way, but it benefits you, it benefits the sponsor, and it benefits your audience when your sponsor is more directly related to their niche. It benefits you because the show sounds better, looks better. It benefits the sponsor because it's more effective for them. It benefits the audience because their content isn't interrupted with something totally unrelated. So the shift, it's not about the quantity of audience. It's about how niched your audience can get in one particular subset. Are you talking to a narrow enough subset? Are you talking to a specific group of people who could all benefit from some sort of product or service out there? Or at least would all be intrigued by some sort of product or service out there? That's the test to know if you're sponsorship ready. And that's, yes, of course, you need some sort of quantity as far as audience is concerned. You can't be talking to 5 people, right? You got to have some quantity, but you can't be obsessed about quantity. And that's a big mistake I see podcasters. They're obsessed about the quantity. So they go off and they buy some podcasting ads because I can reach like 1,000 people. I can buy my way towards all the impressions and the viewership that I need for my ad. So that I can get ads because I have these numbers. That's a shortcut, and it's not a sustainable solution. What is a sustainable solution is building a niche audience in a particular area, building relationships with other service and product providers in that area. Now, all of a sudden, your show is the perfect platform for them. You have some sort of audience, that focused audience in your industry. Now you hand them the megaphone. They pay you in exchange for that audience and for that space. And you have exactly what you've been looking for all along, but thinking and obsessing about the numbers and thinking that that's the way to get it. It's not the way, or the most effective way anyway, for podcasters to succeed. So, what niche are you in? Maybe you're a nonprofit organization serving the underserved, serving the homeless. Who are you talking to? Well, donors, people who are passionate about that just as much as you are, right? Maybe in the business area, maybe you're a roofer, maybe you're a plumber, maybe you're talking to those specific industries. What services do they need? New products and services in that area. You can't just be talking to everyone. We're too broad. Podcasts are too broad. We're talking to people who care about sales. It's a lot of people. Got to narrow that down more. We got to make it so that whoever potentially you could attract as a sponsor is a more attractive offer, product, service to the audience that you're speaking to. And now you're starting to think about sponsorships the right way. You want to talk more about this or how it could relate to your podcast? Hit me up, Storytrust.Media, for more information or to book a time with me. And I'll catch you next week right here on the Story Trust Media podcast. Hope today helped you. Thanks for hanging out.
Thank you for checking out the Story Trust Media podcast. Learn more and get in touch with John at Storytrust.Media.